On 12 September 2025, NATO launched its Operation Eastern Sentry to bolster its eastern flank defences following drone incursions into Poland. NATO's official statement reiterated that any violation of alliance airspace will be met with defence measures. In early September 2025, Poland reported at least 19 drones, suspected Russian, breached its airspace, prompting Allied responses and formal NATO consultations. In addition, NATO confirmed that 3 Russian MiG-31 aircraft entered Estonian airspace for approximately 12 minutes with transponders off, a significant escalation. Former RAF pilot and planner Mikey in your transcript is referenced in his expert capacity. No immediate updating of his position is required here. He said, there have been at least 6 incursions by Russian air assets into NATO airspace in just the past 2 months, including the flight of 19 Russian drones into Polish airspace. He said, just this week, Polish fighter jets have launched twice to intercept Russian intelligence aircraft flying over the Baltic Sea without transponders. He said, so what is Russia's game plan? How does NATO defend? And just how dangerous a moment is this in terms of escalation? Mikey Kate, former RAF pilot and military planner, joined to unpack the rising tension. The first question, what is new about the current period of Russian-Western engagement? Mikey, I said, this game of cat and mouse that the Russians are playing with the West, that's been ongoing since NATO's inception in 1949. What's different about this period we are in now? He replied, I think it's twofold. First, incursions by Russian jets inside NATO sovereign airspace have been ratcheted up considerably. But then also you've got the tensions created by Russia's consistent bombardment of Ukraine with drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles and hypersonic missiles. To illustrate the point, we played a clip of Poland's foreign minister addressing an emergency UN Security Council meeting. He said, I have only one request to the Russian government. If another missile or aircraft enters our space without permission, deliberately or by mistake, and gets shot down and the wreckage falls on NATO territory, please don't come here to whine about it. You have been warned. Turning back to analysis, what do we observe in the latest incursions? Mikey explained. What's notable about them are the variety of situations in which breaches are taking place. He recalled, back in May, there was an Su-35 Russian jet that was effectively doing a show of force inside Estonian territorial waters in the Gulf of Finland. It was doing that because Russia had a shadow tanker, one of these tankers used to circumnavigate sanctions, and the Su-35 was showing force because Estonian maritime naval security forces were trying to apprehend the tanker. When asked whether that was unusual, he responded, not so much in what's called QRA, quick reaction alert. It was only one Su-35 that breached Estonian airspace. Traditionally, when you have quick reaction alert, whether it's NATO or Russia, they'll always launch as a pair of aircraft too. The reason is mutual support, especially if they're going into something potentially confrontational. But then, Mikey pointed out, the drones entering Polish airspace presented a different challenge. We had 19 of them, unannounced, called the Gerber drone, similar in shape to what's called the Geran 2. The Geran 2 was built off an Iranian blueprint called the Shahed 136. The thing about the Gerber is it's got a smaller payload. It's made out of polystyrene and plywood. From the Gerbers that have been shot down and analysed, the big takeaway is basically that it's a tenth cheaper to make this Gerber drone. So you've got additional drones you can just throw up there alongside the Geran 2s. The Geran 2s are longer range, bigger payload, more deadly if you like, but you just throw more drones up there and you're trying to overwhelm air defences. Then he added, and then you've got these 3 Russian jets inside Estonian airspace. These were 3 MiG-31 Foxhound aircraft, massively significant because they've got a speed of about Mach 2.8, so they're incredibly fast. Important to note that that speed does come down depending on the weapons fit of the aircraft. But the big thing here is that it was 12 minutes inside sovereign airspace with their transponders turned off. He paused, then explained for the audience. Let's talk about what a transponder is. It's a small box in the cockpit. Every aircraft has them, military and general aviation. It allows the crew to input a 4-digit code, usually given by area radar, and then what's called secondary surveillance radar picks up that code on the area radar screen, and then they can possibly identify the jet. It's not just location. This box has the ability, under what's called Mode C, to put a height on there as well. So none of that information was on there. The jets would have been picked up via primary radar, so just appear as a little blip. Next, Mikey addressed a further event. Then 2 Russian aircraft in Lithuanian airspace. A Su-30 Russian fighter jet actually tanking off the back of what's called an Ilyushin 78, a Russian tanker, that was only 700 meters inside Lithuanian airspace for about 18 seconds, down in Russia's exclave region called Kaliningrad. So in terms of threat posture, likely a mistake. However, inside sovereign airspace, nonetheless, he summarized, what all this shows is that the tempo is increasing. I asked, yes, the tempo is increasing. On the same day as the Su-30 and the Ilyushin 78 breach, there were 2 Russian fighter jets that violated an economic security zone over a Polish drilling platform inside the Baltic Sea. We then brought in the voice of General Tomasz Demanowski, Poland's Vice Chief of Defence, for comment. He said, Polish responded according to our national and allied procedures, which are implemented in integrated air defence system. And we sent off our quick reaction alert aircraft, which intercepted and escorted the Russian reconnaissance aircraft. They have not violated our airspace. There was no incursion. However, they didn't fly according to the flight plan, and they caused threat to air traffic because they have transponders turned off. I followed up. It's not just military assets. We've had Lithuanian airspace closed this week by smuggling helium balloons launched from areas controlled by the Belarusian KGB. NATO says it's time to hit back. But what does that actually mean in practice? What is an effective, proportionate response that would deter these kinds of hybrid attacks without triggering a broader escalation? The general spoke. That's a very good question, and it is a challenge for us as NATO, because Russia has never been one-directional and one-dimensional. They have always been multi-directional, multi-dimensional. So our response should be exactly the same. They will apply different types of assets. There will be military assets. There will be some kind of service assets, maybe civilian assets, just to cause problems for NATO. So our response should be multi-layered, he elaborated. First and foremost, we must be robust, firm, but at the same time resolute with our military response, very quick, at the speed of relevance. Then, of course, there's a longer-term layer about building up our capabilities along the eastern flank and around our key military and civilian infrastructure. Finally, we must have a strategic response, which is a coupling of political, diplomatic and strategic messaging, and at the same time building up strategic capabilities, not only to show Russia our deterrence by denial, but also our strength, and if necessary, the possibility of use of other assets to protect our sovereignty and territory. I asked, just on that point, General, we just played the clip of the foreign minister saying, don't whine within the Security Council if we shoot down one of your jets. Do you feel in a military capacity that you have a green light to shoot down one of these jets if you're pushed to the utmost extent? He replied, the primary task of the Polish armed forces and the alliance is to protect and defend our territorial sovereignty, and we will always follow the rules and procedures. But whenever there is a very deep incursion into Polish territory or NATO territory, we will act accordingly. So we will take all the measures to stop the danger and stop the threat. Turning back to Mikey, I probed, I've flown the Typhoon. I know the graduated and proportionate options available to NATO pilots. Unless the Russians know that the graduated and proportionate response can be up to and including the use of lethal force, they will keep probing. How do you deliver that intent to Putin and Moscow? How do you show that you will take what is necessary, which can include shooting down a jet? He answered, that's a very tough question because it is all about strategic communication. It's about perception, not just physical actions. We can only show our determination by training and exercises and the posture of our forces. We must show we can act at the speed of relevance. We can hear, we can see them, and we have assets ready to respond. The rest is perception. Part of the story is unity among our allies. There's a single united message sent to Mr. Putin and the Kremlin that we are united and will act together. We are showing that already. We have great support here with Poland from our allies in enhancing air defence, both airborne and ground-based. So combining those military exercises, military posture and missions together with strong strategic communication, we might be able to get across our message to Moscow. The general responded, thank you very much for having me. I said, There are obviously sensitive defence reasons why you can't go into some of the detail, General. Mikey, let's now take a more in-depth look at what assets NATO does have to deter these Russians. Mikey opened. Significant, actually. Let's start with home territory in the UK. There are two bases, RAF Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland, that covers Quick Reaction Alert, QRA, north, and RAF Coningsby in the south, QRA, south. You'll have two Typhoons that swap periodically to ensure 24/7 Quick Reaction Alert coverage, protecting UK sovereign airspace.